Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna devotees, we'll now do a class, Srimad Bhagavatam class. And we'll start with Jaya Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Opi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Opi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Jamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Stota Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Stota Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Nam Acharya Haridas Thakur ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Mathura Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Yamuna Mai ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Sankirtan Yagya ki jai, Samabeta Bhakti Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hari Krishna, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hari Krishna, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hari Krishna, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga Hari Hari Bol. Good morning, everyone. So we will be studying, looking, and examining the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, verse 23. So today there's not many devotees in the temple. So what I'll do is also give the devotees on Zoom an opportunity to chant the verse. But I'll go through it first, and then if anyone in the temple would like to do it, and then I'll open it up for the devotees online. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, I'll do call and response. Jivan Chavho Bhagavatangri Renam. Na Jatu Martyo Bhilabheta Yastu. Shri Vishnu Padya Manu Jastolsya. Svasanchavo Yastu Na Vedagangam. Jivan Chavo Bhagavatangri Renum. Na Jatu Martyo Bhilabheta Jastu. Shri Vishnu Padyamanu Jastulsya. Vasanchavo Yastu Na Vedagangam. Jivanchavo Bhagavatangri Renum. Na Jatu Murtyo Bhilabhetayastu. Shri Vishnu Padyamanu Jastulsya. Vasanchavo Yastu Na Vedagangam. Devotees in the temple. Jivan Chavo Bhagavatangri Renu. Elsya. Vasanchavo Yastu Na Vedagangam. Anyone else? No? Okay. Devotees online, would anyone like to chant the verse?
जीवञ्चवो भागवताङ्घ्रिरेणुं न जातुमर्त्युभिलभेत यस्तु श्रीविष्णुपद्यमनुजस्तुलस्य स्वसञ्चवो यस्तु न वेदगन्धम्.
जीवञ्चवो भागवताङ्घ्रिरेणुं न जातु मृत्योभिलभेतयस्तु श्रीविष्णुपाद्यामनुजस्तुलस्य स्वसाञ्चवो यस्तु न वेदगन्धम्. हरे कृष्ण.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? We'll go through the synonyms. No. Jivan, while living. Shava, a dead body. Bhagavata Angri Renum, the dust of a pure devotee. Na, never. Jatu, at any time. Martya, mortal. Habila Bheta, particularly received. Ya, a person. Tu, but. Shri, with opulence. Vishnu Padya, of the lotus feet of Vishnu. Manuja, a descendant of Manu. Tulsya, the leaves of the Tulsi tree. Shvasan, while breathing. Shava, still a dead body. Ya, who? Tu, but. Na Veda, never experienced. Gandham, the aroma. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of the Tulsi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the breathing dead body is a ghost. When a man dies, he is called dead. But when he again appears in a subtle form, not visible to our present vision, and yet acts, such a dead body is called a ghost. Ghosts are always very bad elements, always creating a fearful situation for others. Similarly, the ghost-like non-devotees who have no respect for the pure devotees, nor for the Vishnu deity in the temples, create a fearful situation for the devotees at all times. The Lord never accepts any offering by such impure ghosts. There is a common saying that one should first love the dog of the beloved before one shows any loving sentiments for the beloved. The stage of pure devotion is attained by sincerely serving a pure devotee of the Lord. The first condition of devotional service to the Lord is therefore to be a servant of a pure devotee. And this condition is fulfilled by the statement, reception of the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee who has also served another pure devotee. That is the way of pure disciplic succession or devotional parampara. Maharaj Rahugana inquired from the great saint Jade Bharat as to how he had attained such a liberated stage of Paramahamsa. And in answer, the great saint replied as follows. Raghunanai tapasya najad yati na cheyaya nirvapanad grihadva na chandasha naiva jangi suryar vinamahat padarajo bhikshikam. O King Rahugana, the perfectional stage of devotional service, or the Paramahamsa stage of life, cannot be attained unless one is blessed by the dust of the feet of great devotees. It is never attained by tapasya, austerity, the Vedic worshiping process, acceptance of the renounced order of life, the discharge of the duties of household life, the chanting of Vedic hymns, or the performance of penances in the hot sun, within cold water, or before the blazing fire. In other words, Lord Sri Krishna is the property of his pure, unconditional devotees, and as such, only the devotees can deliver Krishna to another devotee. Krishna is never obtainable directly. Lord Chaitanya, therefore, designated himself as Gopi Bharutu Pada Kamalayor Das Anudas Hanudas, or the most obedient servant of the servants of the Lord, who maintains the Gopi damsels at Vrindavan. A pure devotee, therefore, never approaches the Lord directly, but tries to please the servant of the Lord's servants. And thus the Lord becomes pleased, and only then can the devotee relish the taste of the tulsi leaves stuck to his lotus feet. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that the Lord is never to be found by becoming a great scholar of Vedic literatures, but he is very pleased, or he is very easily approachable through his pure devotee. In Vrindavan, all the pure devotees pray for the mercy of Srimati Radharani, the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna. Srimati Radharani is a tender-hearted feminine counterpart of the supreme whole, resembling the perfectional stage of the worldly feminine nature. Therefore, the mercy of Radharani is available very readily to the sincere devotees. And once she recommends such a devotee to Lord Krishna, the Lord at once accepts the devotee's admittance into his association. The conclusion is, therefore, that one should be more serious about seeking the mercy of the devotee than that of the Lord directly. And by one's doing so, by the goodwill of the devotee, the natural attraction for the service of the Lord will be revived. Om Jnana Tinirandhasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadapita Svapandatikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vikasha Swamiti Namaste Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Patralini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Read the verse one more time. The person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of the tulsi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. So before I begin, I'd just like to ask permission of the devotees, senior devotees and Vaishnavas in the assembly to speak something in line with the parampara, and please excuse any mistakes or offenses that I may cause during this presentation. Thank you for coming this morning, Saturday morning. This verse is very timely in the we are discussing, the verse is discussing ghosts. And it's just in time for Halloween, which is a favorite among the ghostly population of the United States. And very interesting that this verse is pointing out some very important aspects of how we can understand and make the connection with the absolute supreme truth. And in the discussion of ghosts, we can see that, as it says here, that the ghostly non-devotees are creating a fearful situation for the devotees. And it's interesting, like somehow, this whole Halloween fervor that goes on, it's, if we can look at the actual population and from the description of what this verse is saying, that actually the person who has not at any time received the dust of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And that although they're breathing, they're dead. And so we can see that actually it's our culture at large and our society that we're operating in is fitting the description here of the dead body, although breathing. And so there's like an infatuation in this culture with ghosts, and they glorify them on this time of Halloween. They come out and they kind of make a presentation of ghostly creatures, but actually in everyday life, as we're seeing here, is what is being described is that actually they are, until we can come in touch with the pure devotee of the Lord, we are no better than ghostly dead bodies. And we are missing the real purpose of our human life. So there's a description of when someone is been sentenced to death, they have this, like their final day or whatever, they get their meal, and then when the jailer comes down to get the person from their cell, and then they take them out of the cell and they walk them to the execution chamber, they have a statement that is said. They say, "Dead man walking," to signify that you have the man who's going to death walking to his final resting place. And it can be thought of as pessimistic, but we can actually see the reality of our situation in this material world, which is that we are also in this position of being dead men walking, where without coming in contact with the eternal nature of who and what we really are, we are careening towards our final position of death in this material world. And again, society at large is just functioning not in ignorance of this fact, but in denial of this fact. In denial of the fact that our ultimate position in this material world is to give up everything and lose whatever it is that we have had a connection with. And there's no real solution except for, from a material perspective, there's no real solution except for to try and enjoy as much as possible, to try to get as much as we can and get every last drop of nectar that we possibly can out of this material world. But as we can see that Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, that actually this material world is Dukkalayam and Ashashvatam. What is that? Temporary and miserable. And that there are, but truly what we are, who we truly are, is eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. But we have fallen away from the understanding of that into a place of ignorance. And from that place, as this verse describes, we become ultimately like we are ghostly creatures. And the opportunity to make our way out of this is described in this whole section, as this chapter is about to come to an end. And this whole section is describing the distinction between the devotees and the non-devotees. And we can understand from this point that what is the main goal, and what is the thing that's going to give us the connection to the absolute supreme truth, and that is to take the dust of the pure devotee and put it on our head. So what does that mean? Do we like actually just go around and like take dust and put it on our head? In one sense, you could take it literally, but also there's a deeper understanding of what it means to take the dust of a pure devotee and put it on our head. What that means is, in one sense, yes, literally take the dust, but actually it means to bow down and to submit, to be in a position of humility and subordination and in full acceptance of a pure devotee. And to do that requires our ability to give up our own false identification with ourselves, with our false ego, with all the attachments that we're holding on to in this material world. Because we can easily make a show of putting the dust of a pure devotee on our head and talk about how we worship the pure devotee. But the reality of worshiping a pure devotee and submitting oneself to a pure devotee means that one actually has to truly become subordinate and humble to a point of giving up the false pride and the false ego and the attachments that we have in this material world. And this is the real difficult struggle of the spiritual path. It is doing the work that has been occurring for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime of letting go of these tendencies to be the controller, to be the one who is the director, to be the enjoyer. The outward trappings of being in devotional service, of being, a Paka devotee with, that can, dress nicely and follow all the rules and regulations and chant their rounds and all of that. Yes, all of that there is importance to that. But on the other side, if one is not doing the internal work to break down these false identifications that we have with ourselves, our personalities, our tendencies to control, then we remain stuck. And it's a subtle thing. It's not something that, I mean, we can present ourselves in one way, but the truth is inside. So in regards to this point, we can see that also Srimad Bhagavatam 10:84-13, the verse, one who identifies his self as the inert body composed of mucus, bile, and air, who assumes his wife and family are permanently his own, who thinks an earthen image of the land or his birth is worshipable, or who sees a place of pilgrimage as merely the water there, but who never identifies himself with, feels kinship with, worships, or even visits those who are wise in spiritual truth. Such a person is no better than a cow or an ass. Again, this verse is now comparing these people, comparing us when we're in this conditioned state to an animal. So the Bhagavatam has so much strong language to help us come to the terms of reality. Ghost, animal-like. Does, who's the Vyasadeva just want to write something down that is offending others or pressuring people to do something? No, this is being expressed in this way so that we can come to the real position of understanding that we have to make this progress, to take the dust of the pure devotee on our head. What is required of that is to come to a position of subordination and humility. And when we can work through that, now, how do we work through that? How do we come to this position? It's not, it's in the association of others who are working towards this and who are actually have done this. And what this verse is described as, the actual Sanskrit is what is called as the Bhagavata, the dust of the Bhagavata. And as many of us have heard, there's the person Bhagavata and there's the book Bhagavata. And we can understand that Srila Prabhupada's books and the Srimad Bhagavatam can also be understood as a Bhagavata, which is, if we can worship the Srimad Bhagavatam. How do we worship the Srimad Bhagavatam? We understand that it is the literary incarnation of Krishna, and that by ongoing asta prayeshu habeshu nityam bhagavata sevaya, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So how do we break down this false ego? All these things that are troublesome to the heart, by regular attendance in classes. It's a gradual process. Although in that gradual process, we should also do what we can to maintain a level of reality in terms of what our position is, and recognize that our ultimate goal is to come to this position of bringing ourselves to the feet of the pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, his disciples who have dedicated their lives in this parampara system to following one devotee after another. And so it's to really make progress, as this verse is describing. Not only do we have to follow the rules, we have to submit ourselves to the process and recognize that it is a gradual process. And another important, so there's pitfalls along the way. And one of those pitfalls, in which expressed, well, Srila Prabhupada gave a verse or gave a class on this verse. And one of the points that he really brought up is that this is not bhakti, and understanding of the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita do not come from scholarship. They do not come, it does not come from intelligence. And a pitfall would be that we are using our intelligence to gain more and more knowledge, studying the Bhagavatam, becoming Sanskrit scholars, pundits of so much literature, so, understanding of so much Shastra, or even less that happens in many cases as well. We think that material knowledge is going to somehow give us direction in our spiritual life by becoming, pillars of our community, or, we go through school and we have this intelligence and we're going to use it for Krishna. We also, we should keep in mind that the basis of this material life, that those who are out there who are teaching are the blind leading the blind. They are ghostly. They're like dead bodies walking. So we should be careful not to put faith in these materialistic educators. It's interesting, actually, on this point, my daughter was doing science homework. And so they're studying like the building blocks of life and neutrons and electrons. And so there was one part I was helping her. She asked me to help her. She had this parts of her test was, what are the building blocks of life? And the building blocks of life, essentially, they had like helium, carbon, like, 4 different elements, right? Carbon, hydrogen, helium. And I'm thinking, and so they're saying, this is what it takes to make life. And so I asked her, which I try to encourage her to like think about these types of things. Like, okay, you have to answer back correctly what they're asking you, but it seems to be that there's something missing. Because actually, if you take these elements and you put them together, does life come? You can't combine these pieces, these elements together and get life. So how can you say these are the building blocks of life? And so like that, they're missing the main component of what makes life. And if with a little bit of, Gyan, with a little bit of when our awake, when you just get a little awakened in spiritual understanding, it's obvious, like you can't put together a bunch of chemicals and make life. Life doesn't come from chemicals. Life comes from life, as Srila Prabhupada has so nicely explained. Life comes from life. Life, and what is this? What is life? Life comes from, life is Krishna. Krishna is the supreme soul. And we are part and parcel of that supreme soul. And actually what gives life is the soul. And the reason that soul gives life is because it is a part of the supreme soul. Now, of course, the scientists are not the so-called, materialistic scientists, fools and rascals that are out there claiming to know so many things about the workings of the universe. They don't take that into consideration because they want to claim that would require faith. They cannot add the element of faith into their equation. Although when you take it one step further and recognize that actually what they're also presenting is based on faith, because they cannot prove all of the aspects of what they are presenting as true in their scientific theories. So on some level, we're always accepting a version of a description of our reality based on faith. And from that, so from the Krishna conscious perspective, we are accepting the version of reality that is given in the Parampara system, in the Vedas, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavad Gita, because we understand that that is perfect knowledge. And that is true science in the sense that it is true. It does not change. It is the process that is delivered and given is repeatable. And it is given by those with perfect knowledge. In contrast to the material scientists that are trying to examine and explore the material world with imperfect senses, and then take that and create theories about the material world and how it began and where it's going and what it's doing, and then changing those theories whenever some new idea comes into their mind. So we're accepting as devotees what is given to us in the scriptures, in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And yes, it does require a level of faith. But again, so does anything in this world. Faith is there. So we're not accepting it blindly, or we're not pretending that it doesn't require faith. Or our goal is to expand on our faith, and at the same time realize through the process that is given and see the changes in our own life taking place that are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. See how when we follow the process of Krishna consciousness, do what is asked of us, then that process, we can see those repeatable, real changes taking place in our life. And I'm sure that everyone who's listening to this has had that experience to some degree or another of the repeatable process of Krishna consciousness making big changes in our consciousness and in our everyday life. Like, there's so much talk about like change your life, or make a change in the world, but it's just a cycle. It's like they call it like the problem solution mass. Without Krishna, this is how it works. You have a problem, and then you get a solution to the problem, but then the solution to the problem then becomes the problem. Then it just, so like, for example, there's everyone, we have automobiles, and what was the precursor to the automobile? Like what did people use to get around before cars? Horses. Yes. So, but there was a problem with horses. What was the problem with horses? Does anyone know why what was one of the major problems with using horses as transportation? Pollution. What pollution were horses doing? So if you have 100 horses in the street, what happens? Constantly running. There's just constant horse manure in the street. So people are thinking, this is not, as more people come, more horses come, you just get more and more pollution in the street. So what was the solution to that? Well, let's create vehicles, cars, then there'll be no pollution. Right? So then, but then what happens? Then the cars are now the source of the pollution. So they say. But this is to illustrate the point. Like, you're just creating you're creating solutions to problems that then become the problem themselves. But with Krishna consciousness, that is not, we're not getting a solution that is then becoming the problem. It becomes a problem for our material life in the sense that those things that we then that we have set up in our material life start to become we recognize that they're unnecessary for us, and we have to make changes in our life. But those changes result in our happiness. Those changes result in our deeper understanding of ourselves, and they result in our ability to actually ultimately remove ourselves from this unnatural position that we find ourselves in, which is that we are growing old, we are taking birth, we are getting diseased, and we are dying. This is an unnatural position for us. Mostly this ghost-like population, which, as it's described in the purport here, is always creating problems for the devotees. How all of these situations in the world we can see that are taking place, how many uncomfortable situations are happening in the world for the non-devotees. It's constantly something. It's this war, that war, this famine, that famine, this epidemic, that epidemic, this dictator, that dictator. Never ends. It's never ending in the material atmosphere. And that does create difficult positions for the devotee, but ultimately the devotee knows that this world is, there's not some utopian idea that there's ever going to be a position of ultimate happiness and peace in this material world. So we recognize that, yes, we are going to have to accept and tolerate the difficult positions that we end up in based on this ghost-like population of non-devotees who are in control of the world. But Srila Prabhupada actually had a concept for a revolution in society, a revolution of consciousness, which is really the only real solution to the problems that we face. And we're up against, there's a very tiny, minute group of those who understand that this is the solution up against this gigantic ghostly population. But that's not to say that the very small rudder can't change the direction of the whole ship. So we can, if we can connect ourselves to Srila Prabhupada's true message and true mission, which was to not only save ourselves, but to also work to save others and create a position in society that is actually sane and that allows for the true purpose of human life to be realized. It's a tall order because, again, we're in Kali Yuga. Everything is it's an ocean of faults. But ultimately, like, we can, if we believe and follow Srila Prabhupada's direction, we can make that change, not only in ourselves, not only in the Krishna consciousness movement, but in the whole world. We actually, Srila Prabhupada in many places said, like, this movement can completely change the whole societal structure of the world to create a position of true happiness. And right now, it's obviously it's not looking good, but in some ways it is, because this movement is thriving actually underneath the, kind of, it's not so much undercover, but again, we can make sure that we are following the process that is directly given by the pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, that we are in this parampara system underneath his direction and his guidance. Recognize that this is a movement, a revolutionary movement. And that for us, our requirement, as described in this verse, is to worship and take the dust of the pure devotee. And how we do that is by becoming truly obedient and following and giving up our attachments to this controlling, enjoying Lord of all I survey false ego tendency. So the work starts within ourselves, and that gradual process is what will ultimately purify us. And we have this process, we chant Hare Krishna, it is helping us break this down. It's the purification process. So in this regard, I'll open it up to any thoughts or questions or ideas in relation to what I just said. If anyone has anything to mention or anything they want to ask, go ahead now. I'll start with anyone in the temple. Anything? Yes, Prabhu.
This class as usual. I think it's funny that, just how most sciences are really just speculation. It's really just, I think, this guy people feel like they're and it's so basic, like these elements don't create life, but they say they do. I mean, we're like in such a world, but I think that's important too, is being that beacon of light, teaching people right, and teaching people to actually think properly, or question, at least question.
Yes.
Like, does these elements really create life? Or, and just by presenting that, it can help somebody, come out of that mind of just blindly following.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know.
Yes, it's an unfortunate position that most people find themselves in that we're being directed and guided by fools and rascals from the very outset of our life. And it's a rare, fortunate position to have come in contact with someone who actually has knowledge, because it's, as you mentioned, it is just like, it's not that hard to understand if someone can just direct you. Like, obviously you can't put these four things together. You can't put these elements together and create a life. So, oh, well, so then what's missing? But if you don't have that alternative, oh, it's the soul, it's the jiva, it's the life force in everything. But if one never has ever heard of that, then there's no way to even put the two and two together. But once you can, it's very simple. It's like, oh yeah, the soul plus the material elements, bringing them together, there you have life. So, and yeah, material science is more or less speculation. Yeah. Anything else from the devotees? Bhakta David, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Our glories to your Prabhupada. I just had a thought. All matter is not life. It is dead. All matter is dead. It's the super soul and the soul that is life. So even these building blocks of life aren't really life. They're just dead matter, like our bodies are dead matter. What moves us is the life, is the soul, the jiva, the super soul. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, it's very important to keep. It's the very basic aspect of what is described in the Bhagavad Gita, but also it's also the highest the most confidential knowledge is we are not these bodies, and these bodies are full of, they're dead. And that's why they get thrown to the jackals, or, not that they were throwing bodies to the jackals very much, but, it's described that way in the Bhagavatam, but cremated, buried. What's the use of a dead body? Yes, ISKCON Philadelphia.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for a really nice class, the way you tied it in, the way you started with Halloween. The point that I was thinking about was how we should be taking the dust off the pure devotees. And you gave some examples, reading the Bhagavatam, listening to, the Bhagavatam classes and things like that. But could you talk about some more examples of how we could serve the pure Bhagavat? And that point about humility, how do we, nobody says I'm an arrogant person. I am not humble. All of us think of ourselves as being humble. I guess we're not humble in even thinking that we are humble, but how could we act practically, be humble and serve?
Very nice. Okay, so the first part, I'll just repeat back. So the second part was how can we be humble and serve, and what are some things that we can do? Yeah, so what are some things we can do to serve the pure devotee? Well, this was a point actually that I was, in my preparation, I was actually considering, it's the spirit with how we do it and what our intention is in our heart that matters. So it's there's this whole idea of just add Krishna, right? And so we can do, as Krishna describes to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, it's not so much what we're doing, it's what's the spirit and what are we trying to accomplish by doing it. So we can practically serve Srila Prabhupada's mission in so many ways. If we take the effort to understand what Srila Prabhupada's mission is, there is innumerable different aspects of service that we can take part in. Coming to the temple, going out on Harinam, doing things even if you can't make it to Harinam or you can't make it to the temple. There's so many things online that one can do in terms of, maybe you can start writing, whatever it is that we are good at, or that we feel like, it's not even so much that we're good at, but we just serve at the basic level wherever we can, but the goal, but with an intention to serve, not with an intention to get something out of it, but with an intention to give. And in the beginning, that may be happening there, that might not be natural, or you might not necessarily be able to do it, but at least that's what we want to come into it with, that mood or that intention, is to serve. So we can practically serve the devotee, serve Srila Prabhupada, and serve the devotees of Srila Prabhupada. And in terms of the humility side of things, again, it's a gradual process. So paying attention to our mind, noticing when we have anger showing up, and if we're communicating in relation to that anger, or if we are communicating in relation to envy, we should have a clear enough mind. We should be sober enough. Dhira, the term in Sanskrit. Sober is, I guess you can call it, but it's we should be able to perceive, not should, but if we're focusing on perceiving reality and perceiving ourselves enough to recognize when we're not doing it, then we can start to move closer and closer. And using our free will that we have, which is a very minimal free will, to make the choice of functioning in a position of service or functioning from a position of false ego, and being able to tell the difference requires self-reflection and being able to see oneself from a clear place. So I hope that gives some practical direction, but I'm still working on it myself. So I'm happy to take any guidance from more advanced devotees than myself in that regard.
That does help. Thank you very much. All of us are a work in progress, so need to help each other. Thank you.
That's very nice. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yes, in the temple here.
So I listened to yet like another positive metaphor of receiving the dust on the feet of the pure devotee upon one's head, without, mentioning rascals or what is bad with someone else. But I think the awe that we can feel when we see a pure devotee is giving us like this dimension of thought into it is maybe a metaphor, maybe it is not a metaphor, how we can even like be so humble, voluntarily in awe, being in awe, that we want to put, touch, his or her like feet, in, like again in pure awe. So if there is, someone wants to speculate on that metaphor in this like awe positive way, that would be helpful to me. And really,
Okay, yeah. So taking it from the position of positive as opposed to negative to being able to, yes, yes. So instead of thinking of it, so one approach for a practical approach of being able to actually get to the point of being able to take the dust of a devotee on our head, thinking of it from a place of awe and reverence and how great and how wonderful this devotee is, so that we can continue to get closer to them, as opposed to thinking how bad those who aren't that way are. Yes. No, that's that's very nice. I mean, it's different people respond in different ways to different approaches, and certainly it's helpful to come from that. It's a lot of I have a tendency to be this way in terms of in terms of how I present things, or like what I am attracted to in the Bhagavatam, which is like calling people out, or like, looking at the stuff that's not working and being like, oh, look at how bad that is. And to the degree that I'm not attached to my own opinions and ideas, like, and it can help me get closer, then yes. But also certainly there's that positive side that we don't want to overlook, which is that actually that Krishna is great. Krishna is beautiful, and everything is emanating from Krishna. So in essence, actually everything, we can say that if we can connect to the beauty and the greatness, but also that's a healthy method for making progress in spiritual life. Anything else? Okay. Thank you all for coming. Have a Krishna conscious day and week in life. Jai. Vanchakopa Trupyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Titana Pavani Vyo Vaishnavyo.
Namo Namah. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice class.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.